I found a photo of Sarah Forbes Bonetta, a small carte de visite. I think it was in the National Portrait Gallery in the UK. And I was intrigued because I had not heard about her story. I was reading who she was. And at the same time, I was working on a series, Diaspora, which is a series I made, including my husband. He's also part of the series. It talks about African migrants moving to Europe and how it is to be placed in Europe, coming from the African continent. And when I know from my own experience, from my husband, we were living his experience when we moved to Europe. That it's quite a process with dual identities where, one side of you is African, the other side you have to fit in here. And a lot of people that move to Europe experience feelings of displacement. It's very difficult to fit in. And at the same time, I was seeing the photo of Sarah Forbes Bonetta, and I was like, wow, her photos, with white, light dresses, she looked very regal. But I kept on wondering, how was it for her to move here? She was stolen from her homeland, taken here. I thought, how free was she even at the court of Queen Victoria? So all these questions were already part of our lives at home. And then I found her photo and I was like, incredible that we do not know this story because she was at the court of Queen Victoria. And it also is exciting to the role of photography. In the 19th century, it was invented, and Queen Victoria was really enthusiastic about the medium of photography. She would hire a lot of photographers to make images of her family for eternity. Because of the medium, we have proof that Sarah existed. Because in written history, we couldn't read about her. She was invisible or hidden. So it's interesting how people in Europe, people of color were hardly eternalized by paintings or by photography. And that is something that I find interesting because, I grew up in Europe, I'm white, and I was also taught different narratives. And I think the main part of my work is that I'm investigating these narratives that I've been taught. And I find very interesting stories of history that's actually different than how I was taught. And this is something, I want to open up, find out more about. And Sarah's story was completely entwined in that investigation also. I met Kyla because of the series Diaspora. So we started connecting. In all my work, I don't work with models. They are all people sharing their lives and their experience. So they're not models, but they're really my co-authors, which is important for me. And we storytell together. So Kyla told me that she too was orphaned at the age of 4, just like Sarah Forbes Bonetta. And she too came to Europe as Miss Uganda. And she too had feelings of displacement when she moved to Europe. And so we connected the story to Sarah, and we thought it was interesting to connect, the contemporary story, to be able to tell the story of Sarah in the 19th century. And that's how we started working together. We talked about dress, but obviously that's my job as a photographer, to create a set and a setting where the sitter can sit. But because it was her lived emotions, it was important. It's her emotions that are the same emotions probably that Sarah was feeling. So the connection was very important, and for those emotions to also appear in the portraits. Sarah is no more alive, so it's from reading about her history. And I think I made these portraits in 2015. Now I've learned so much more about Sarah. The last 9 years, I've met her descendants, which was a long journey to find them. And I've learned a lot more about Sarah and her legacy. So when I started making the series, I didn't have all this knowledge, and it was just the experience of Kyla, the experience of my husband, and the experience of the people I had portrayed for my series Diaspora, where I wanted to explore these feelings together with Kyla about, these feelings of displacement and having, one leg there, one leg here, and really feeling like an outsider in Europe. So I couldn't talk to Sarah. Yeah. It's just using these experiences and having Kyla there to represent those feelings from our own experiences was what it was all about. I went to Lagos to find them also. I was there for Photo Lagos, where she was exhibited. And I made it my mission to find her descendants, which is really difficult because the family is really big and they go from Nigeria to Sierra Leone to the UK. But I wanted to find the Bonetta line, so the children of Sarah Forbes Bonetta, and then the ones that came from that line. So not so much the whole Randall line and it was difficult to find. And after 2.5 years, I found finally a lineage to somebody apparently in Lagos, where I had been, couldn't have found someone. And we started connecting, and that's been 3 years ago. And we finally met last year in London. And that was very special because his lineage is very short. So Sarah Forbes Bonetta is his great-great-grandmother. So not great-great-great-great, because he was the youngest of the grandson of Sarah Forbes Bonetta. So it was very special, and we established a relationship now, which is resulting in another project, where we also are trying to get the remains of Sarah back from, that's why I'm here, from Portugal, from Madeira to Nigeria, so she can go home. I think her grave in Madeira, it really struck a chord with me. And also, when I went to Nigeria, to Lagos, hardly anybody knew about her story as well, which made me a bit sad because it's their legacy, There's an island in Lagos, Victoria Island, that's named not after Queen Victoria, but actually of the daughter of Sarah Forbes Bonetta, after Victoria, who was named after Queen Victoria. So there's so much narrative missing, and there's so much conversations to be had, and it's not being done a lot. So I think what struck me more was the tiredness of her grave, the loneliness, the fact that she never chose to be buried there. And that I feel, the family is so big, the rest of her family is all buried in Lagos. I think my biggest mission was for her to return home. And luckily the family also embraces that idea now and want her back home. So, and then there's artifacts of the family that have been shown and shared with me. So when she would go home, if it's successful return, we are planning a ceremony which is very important, an ancestral ceremony also of getting her back to the family grave, which is on the family compound, is really important. And then we're also making portraits with her living descendants, and then I can sleep. It's such a big wish because I'm so engaged with Sarah's story after all these years. But I think for Sarah, for her to be resting, it's important to go back home. Also for an ancestral ritual, it's important that she really rests where she's from, because her journey has been really, really difficult. She was orphaned, her whole family was killed, she was picked up, taken to Great Britain. She had to perform, she was very bright, she had privileges, but nevertheless she was never really free. I mean, imagine that. Then you have babies, you're sick, you're sent around the world. And she sadly died at the age of 37, but she's been through a lot. What I found intriguing is the role of photography when I found that little carte de visite of Sarah Forbes Bonetta. Because of that photo, we only know that she existed. So otherwise we would have never had proof that Sarah Forbes existed. And I felt that there must be more Sarahs in Europe in the 19th century. more women and people of color that were present, and some of them were also, free and merchants, but they were just not seen as relevant because of their status. So their photos or the likeness would be put into archives or drawers or sent back to different countries. But in Europe, they were just, made irrelevant. And with Bloom, I'm actually digging up these stories of portraits I find of women of color, and to put a light on them also, and find more proof that the history, how I was taught in Europe, is actually quite different and more diverse than what I've been taught. And the role of the camera as a medium to record people, I find fascinating. So Bloom is really about that. It's a follow-up of Sarah Forbes Bonetta, and to find her contemporaries at that time, and to make a bigger narrative about it. And I use flowers because in the Victorian times, florography was very important. It's a language of flowers where you encode secret messages, because the Victorians were very closed up and they would give each other tussie-moussis and flowers, and their photo albums would be covered with flowers. So it's all about putting light to a narrative that was hidden. With the next project that I'm working on in the next 2 years, I'm actually using old cameras to make photos of my children also, of my daughter. And then that camera has probably only seen white people in the 19th century. And I'm making portraits that could be from then, made with the camera from then, and then maybe change the narrative a bit, of our collective history, because it's been so one-sided. So everything, I'm just opening on conversations about our shared history and learning about that.